Reports of a new form of the coronavirus known as COVID-19 have sprung up in Wuhan.
Tracking the spread of the outbreak, COVID-19 causes deaths around the world.
The World Health Organization has declared COVID-19 a pandemic.
As the virus continues to spread, much of the world is left in panic.
The disease has now touched every single continent.
Here in the U.S., we now have nearly 360,000 confirmed cases, with more than 10,000 deaths.
COVID-19 ventilator shortage kicks global industries into production frenzy.
My name is Brian BENEDUCE. I've been suffering from acute anxiety for decades.
I'm not a psychiatrist. I am not a psychologist. But I do consider myself an expert when it comes to dealing with anxiety and panic. I suffered from agoraphobia. That is the absolute fear of leaving your safe place. For decades, I suffered in silence. Back then, mental health wasn't something people talked about. But when I found out what it was, I cured myself. I used simplistic tools to do that. 20 years panic-free. I'd like to offer my advice, my skills, my emotional backpack to you, dealing with COVID-19. And I'm hoping and I pray that my tools and my words might offer some help to calm some of the nerves and the anxiety that are out there today.
Everybody worries and everybody has anxiety. And an anxiety attack is essentially taking worry and making it to its worst form to where you are panicking over things that does not affect you physically. A panic attack is when it affects you emotionally and physically, and then you need to do something about it. It starts out, you think you're going to go blind, you think you're going insane. You think that you're mentally going to go insane, and your body's going to take over and do something that you don't want it to do. But this fear is so prevalent and so it's so real that it takes over your body, and you're afraid to get a haircut, you're afraid to go to the bank, you're afraid to go on ski trips, you're afraid to do anything, especially in front of your friends, because they're going to think you're showing weakness, you can't do this, you can't do that, and what's wrong with Brian, he's going crazy. So I lied about a lot of things. I embellished, I lied, I faked illnesses to get out of things, because every time you go to do something, you always have those what we call what ifs. And there's nothing positive that can come after what if when you're suffering from what we now call agoraphobia. What if my throat closes? What if I pass out? What if I get dizzy? And all these what ifs start happening. And we didn't have computers back then. Thank God, because I probably would have been on WebMD for 24/7. But at least I would have heard the words panic, anxiety, agoraphobia. I didn't know what it was. I was 37 years old when I saw an infomercial on TV, Lucinda Bassett's Midwest Center for Anxiety and Panic. That was the first time I ever heard the words panic, agoraphobia. Everybody feels anxious, but panic and agoraphobia, I never heard those words. And she was describing every feeling, every incredible thought and fear I've ever had. And I stayed up all night and I waited for my wife to wake up, and I told her about it. And all of a sudden she started crying, and it explained so much because of things that seep through the cracks, if you will. So once I realized that this was a mental disorder, this was something that was created. This is something that I call my anxiety tree. This is something that started out at 5 years old, worried about going blind and keeping the light on so you don't go blind. And when my parents used to leave, thought my throat was closing. And the tree just blossomed, and the tentacles got worse, and the torment and the panic and all these different things start spiraling out of control because nothing's there to clip the trees, because you don't know how to clip the trees. You don't have the mental medication to do that or the mental capacity to do that. Once I realized what it was, it being a fix-it kind of guy, I had to find a way to fix it.
I don't watch TV. I don't get into the numbers and, the horrible deaths that are happening. And I choose to do that so my kids see me dealing with it that way, because I don't want to be in a ball rocking back and forth, if you will, of worry and dread. I want to live my life. And of course, we've all changed the way we've lived our life. But internally, I want to live my life with more of happiness than the dark place I was before. I refuse to go back to that place. Stay in touch with your friends, because we need to be in touch. It's very important. When we don't have human touch, we can obviously, this is fantastic, even what we're doing today, to get messages out there of hope. It's a word that I use a lot because that's what people are looking for. Dealing with this COVID-19, that's what we're looking for, is hope.
I got arrested in Warminster, Pennsylvania, because I was in traffic in the middle of the day. And I was in the middle lane, and there was an accident. And I had to get to an appointment, and I was so worried about getting to that appointment that I got out of the car. And the problem was the cops were directing traffic. And I was in a suit, and I'm walking by. I said, my car is there. I can't stay in my car. I got to go to my appointment. He says, I'm sorry, you can't do that. The beast just kept going around and around and around in my head, and it told me to get out. Just get out of the car. And I got out of the car, and I kept going. And he said, you got to go back to your car. And I said, I can't go back to my car. And he called one of his buddies over. They took me to the side, and I said things I shouldn't have said, and they handcuffed me. So guess what? The beast is here with me. And if you don't mind, I'm going to talk to that beast for a second. Since early childhood, you have driven me crazy. From Cub Scouts to Boy Scouts to sleepovers. You have made me think I've had diseases. You have made me think my throat was closing. You have made me think that I was going crazy since I was a young kid. That's right, I'm talking to you. And then into my teenage years, you fought even harder. You fought on my ski trips. You fought when I went to baseball games. You fought, more importantly, you fought when I was alone with my thoughts, with you. You drove me insane constantly. When I was on dates, when I traveled, everywhere I went, this thing was with me. But what you don't understand is I just showed them vulnerability. I just told you that I'm afraid to speak in public. So I just lessened the beast. I just told him my fear. So what are you going to do about that?
I was suffering with this mental illness for many years, decades actually. So because of that, this COVID virus, I choose to look at it differently because I've been asked, this is very real. Well, let me tell you something. The imaginary thoughts that you can have in your head far exceed anything that's real. So the way I'm handling this is using my toolbox. Drop your armor, act as if, and I'll get into the tools in a few minutes. But that's how I choose to handle it. Am I nervous? Am I scared? Of course I am. Everybody is. What is my toolbox? Well, my toolbox is very simple. These are simple tools that I use to this day to help me manage my anxiety. Drop your armor is the first and foremost part of dealing with this anxiety, dealing with the panic and agoraphobia. When I realized what I had, I realized it was anxiety, and it was only anxiety. It wasn't a death sentence. So I looked at it as that way, And I started to drop my armor. I started to stop fighting it. And the hardest part of this whole process is letting it come. You need to let it come. It's almost like detoxing, emotionally detoxing. So what you're doing is you're letting the beast come in, you're letting the bully come in, and you're feeling the symptoms, but you're not letting it affect you. And once you can get to a point where you're almost laughing at it, now what you do is you go to the second one called act as if. Act as if is essentially be the person you want to be and rid yourself of that anxiety. Even if you're nervous, if you get down to being nervous in situations, that's normal. Anxiety and panic attacks, that's irrational fear out of control. Why be nervous? You should be excited. And you don't get up in the morning and you don't say, oh no, I gotta. Change it to, you know what? I get to. Or I'm so happy I can. It just changes your mindset to a positive place rather than a negative place. The best coach, the best person you can rely on is in the mirror. And that's the person that you have to rely on the most. And once you can rely on all the things, drop your armor, act as if, now you say, nobody's coming. If you start to feel those anxious moments, nobody's coming, I can deal with this myself. Now you know you made it. Those are the main tools, and I still use them to this day. And believe me, from a person that was petrified to leave his house to talking to you and thousands of others, it works. The only thing that's on TV right now, other than movies, of course, is negative. There's nothing good that's happening. And it seeps into your subconscious, even though you say, yeah, it doesn't bother me, it does. You're going to tell me watching a comedy or watching a stand-up comedian isn't going to make you happier than sitting there staring at CNN or CNBC or whatever it is? It's not going to happen. It doesn't happen for me. I know it's not going to happen for you. Another thing that keeps my anxiety at bay is exercise. During this COVID-19, it is extremely important to move around. Even a small amount of anxiety can create what's called a fight or flight response. It's essentially adrenaline and cortisol, which is released into your bloodstream. And by doing push-ups and taking a brisk walk, it will help you rid yourself of this reaction, which, by the way, is perfectly normal during these heightened times of real fear. That's how I choose to handle this COVID-19.
My first panic attack, and I remember it vividly, was I was 16 years old. And I was walking through the Midland Mall with one of my best friends. And for some reason or another, I had to get out. And I didn't know why, but there was this feeling of dread, this feeling of my throat was closing. And at that point, I didn't know why. Leading up to that point, a lot of things were going on emotionally and physically that I didn't know were happening. Well, the beast starts at an early age. It started when I was 5 years old. It was sleepovers. Sleepovers to me were the worst words in the world because that meant I had to fake sleeping. And at my cousin's house, when I used to sleep over, I'd wait for them to fall asleep. And then I'd rock my head because I'd hear my ear, the heartbeat in my ear, and the heartbeat would be going. Now, how do you stop your heartbeat from going that fast when you're 10, 11, 12 years old? And you have no idea why. And then if I woke up in the middle of the night, because if I did fall asleep, then my throat would close. So what I'd have to do is I would literally take my hands like this and hold them and make sure I can feel myself swallowing. So now I'm 11 years old, I'm 58 years old, I'll be 59 next week, and I still remember doing this.
Everyone gets nervous. Some people get nervous to a very high level of anxiety degree, but to still continue on with your life, acknowledging this is there, even talking to it. I think Brian has a name for his, I think it's called the beast. So not letting the anxiety stop you, kind of feeling the fear and moving through it anyway. Anxiety can be very crippling for young people. Social anxiety has become a really huge problem. A lot of people approach anxiety like pretending it doesn't exist, but really what a lot of anxiety experts talk about is having young children name it and then kind of confront it and then move through it, not letting them stop it. Being courageous means going through and still working through your anxiety, not letting it stop you. Just having a plan and working through that plan and preparing for it, so when the anxiety shows up, talking to it, talking yourself through it so that you can still participate in the activities that you enjoy, that you like.
I was always concerned that whatever I was feeling, this anxious, this worry, this constant fear of panic, that I would always pass it down to my kids. My daughter, she had anxiety at a very young age. It started to get worse as she got older. One particular time, she started to have the feelings of anxiety. Her heart was racing, she couldn't catch her breath. And we were walking through town, and I sat her down and I explained the symptoms that she was having with a smile on my face. Having dealt with it myself, I explained the rapid heartbeat. I said, yeah, you sweating yet? I said, do you feel like you can't breathe? And I said, I know, honey, that's all. It's called an anxiety attack. I said, don't worry, it's going to subside in a little while, to go away. And I just looked at her and held her hand, and I didn't say, are you okay? I didn't say, calm down. I just explained to her what was going on. And then she had another one in Naples, Florida, and she was a little older, and it subsided within 3 minutes. And she hasn't had one since, and she's 28 years old. So yeah, I was very fearful of them having it.
So I'm here in my home office, so we may have some technical difficulties because of COVID-19. We're all self-isolating. I work with young adults with mental health challenges, and they're experiencing a lot of anxiety. But now, in this time of COVID-19, everyone's experiencing a degree of anxiety, a degree of depression, just, kind of climbing the walls and wanting to get outside. And the temptation is to say, yeah, just go out, just you can hang out, you can do whatever. But it's really a time where you want to have your young adults inside, interact with them. One of the strategies that I found very helpful is there are young adults talking directly to young adults on the video to say, hey, you know what, I was outside and it wasn't a good idea. Just stay inside. 70% of young people are more influenced by their peers, by their young adults. That's what the research tells us. So that's one effective strategy, is to really engage with your young adults and have them listen to messages from other young adults around the world to let them know. You want to kind of normalize the anxiety, normalize the feelings of, ooh, I'm feeling a little bit cagey, and that we're all going to get through this together. Another strategy is a coping skills jar. So you can take anything you have in your house. It can be a plastic cup. It can clean out a spaghetti jar. You take the jar and you brainstorm about 50 things that are helpful when you're not feeling well. So these can be, doing some yoga stretches. It can be playing Uno with your kids. A walk around the block is awesome. Finding a movie that you can all find and connect to. But it's finding things that calm you in this very difficult time. All these kind of activities can help make it seem less like Groundhog Day, the same day over and over again.
The best advice I could give is honesty, because they know what's going on, especially social media, and even at a young age. As a family, I would sit down with them and explain exactly what's going on, with a smile on your face. It's only a virus. It's a virus that the smartest people in the world are working on, and we're going to fix this. But then change the focus to something in the future that's absolutely fun and exciting for them. For instance, plan a vacation, but plan a vacation around something they've done before, so it's as vivid as possibly can be. For that moment, they will forget about exactly what's going on, and they'll focus on something else. Think good thoughts, not bad. And it sounds simplistic, but it really does work. And it takes the attention away from the bad that's going on, and it trains your mind after a certain amount of time to only think about the good. Someday this COVID-19 will end. I believe that most of the time, if not all, good does come out of bad. And in this situation, appreciation is the word. We're going to appreciate what we have in our lives. We're going to appreciate and what we've taken for granted, myself included. And I believe we're going to come together as a nation. I think things are going to be more relaxed. Take 9/11, if you will. When 9/11 happened, our world was coming to an end. We didn't know what was going to happen. And then 2 months later, it was almost back to normalcy. So I'm hoping that the same scenario happens, that we go through this together, we fix it together, and we come together as a nation and we learn to live with less fear in our hearts. And now I'd like you to hear from somebody who I think sums it up best.
We should take comfort that while we may have more still to endure, better days will return. We will be with our friends again. We will be with our families again. We will meet again. But for now, I send my thanks and warmest good wishes to you all.